Hey guys, what is up? It is ConnorBots here, aka Cinemaster, and today we're going to be doing a tutorial over realistic shell ejection. Some people have asked me for this tutorial as well as friends, so we're going to just dive right into it. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind with people is that every shot you do is going to be different, whether you're close up or wide, but for this one, we're going to use this shot that was graciously provided by ActionVFX's free stock footage library. Highly go check them out. They have great stock assets as well as free assets. A lot of the assets that we're using today, I believe actually all of them, are going to be from ActionVFX.com. So definitely go check them out. They're a wonderful company that is helping the filmmaking community. So let's get started. So the first thing I like to do, since like I said, it kind of really depends on the type of shot you're doing and whatnot, but if you look right here, the gun doesn't seem powerful enough, in my opinion. So a good trick that I have learned here is by finding where the buttstock of the gun kind of hits into his arm, right? So if we watch it here again, find right where it kind of hits in. So you look for where it pushes in, and then you're going to actually remove, split your layer and remove one frame and pull it in. And you're going to do that on most all of the hits. Sometimes it really depends on the angle of your shot, because sometimes it can look funny if they're moving, it's just to help when a character is standing still, make their gun look like it pops a little bit more. So we're going to go through and we're going to add that little push in, and it should look like this kind of when you're done. So now we've kind of gone through, added where our cut parts are. All right, it looks like that gun kicks a little bit more, and I like that. So it's looking good right here. So next thing we're going to dive into is the smoke that comes from the shell ejection. There actually is a lot of smoke. And this is another preference thing as well too. Again, location, if you're indoor, outdoor, how much smoke is going to be made, what type of gun it is, the caliber, all those things matter when you're going into effects with guns and whatnot. So for this one, it's a little smoky, they're indoors. So ActionVFX provides great shell ejection smoke. So here's a couple of their assets right now. We're going to go with their second one right here with the burst. We're going to import that in right here. And we're gonna want to push it a little forward so we get it already kind of starting. And I'm liking that. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's looking good. And then we're gonna keyframe it because we got a keyframe in position. So I'm gonna move it there. I'm gonna get the rotation tool, get flat planed the effect so it looks like it's flat with the spot. And we're gonna go through and we're going to keyframe it with the gun so it matches and stays on it correctly. And so when you're done with that, you should get something that kind of looks similar to this when you're done. So now we've keyframed everything up. It's looking a little good, a little still funky and whatnot, Again, it depends on lighting and whatnot, what's happening, the blending. So we'll get a little bit more into that. So the next thing we're going to do is we need to create a new layer, a black solid layer. We're going to start with the actual ejection of the shells part. So I just called it ejector, push OK. We're going to turn off the layer, keep it below the smoke. And then with our friendly pen tool, we are going to start drawing out the shell ejector space. It's always fun to do the masking part. And so you really want to go detail with this too. And so we'll turn that on, we'll go into our mask. We want to keyframe that. Go into our feather. We don't want to feather too much, but I usually try to keep it under 15 if I can. 12 seen a much, 7's a lot. We're gonna go 4. Yeah, it's looking good. And so, like I said, now with our mask keyframed, we're going to have to go through frame by frame and mask the position of it. And so sometimes I like to just select them all, move them in place, and then adjust what I need to adjust. Helps save a little bit of time, since masking is a very tedious and long process that I know us editors hate. But anyways, once you get through, you'll mask everything. You should get something that kind of looks a little similar, you know, like this when you're finished. So kind of finished all through here. Now it looks good, but it's also just solid black, you know, and that doesn't look right because it actually opens up and closes, So what I do is I go through on the opacity now. We're going to keyframe it at 100, move one frame, hit 0, then go 3 frames, and on the 3rd frame, we hit it 100 again, but we need to go back 1 frame to hit 0, and that 100, we're going to keep right here. So as you can see, 0. So we let it kind of blend down and go back 1 more and hit 100. Boom. So we want to keep it for at least 2 frames. Sometimes, again, it depends on the preference. You might have to do it 1, but for this one, we've done it for 2. So now that we're finished with that, it looks something like this. And that's looking better. It's getting there. It's not fully ready yet, but like I said, this is a tutorial. We're going to learn how to make and blend this so it looks good. So now we're going to start with these shells. So again, ActionVFX provides these great shell ejection effects that we're going to launch right into here. So here's a great front one. You just scale it up a little bit, find the part where it appears. We're going to scale it up so the rifle, and don't worry about it, obviously, if it loses quality. Get the highest if you can. 4K is preferable or higher, but it's going to be blurred anyways. So we put it right here. And so now we're going to need to also keyframe the shells where we want them to go each time the ejector opens up. And so this is the tricky part, because shells don't always follow the same path. You want to kind of give them a different direction for each one. You know, it also depends on how much your character is moving, you know, the caliber of gun, etc. You know, things like that. But as you can tell, we're just going to go through, kind of put it in, do a little rotation to help change it if you want to just use the same asset, if you're stuck with that, or you have other ones. You know, put them through and kind of place them in. So luckily for our shot, our shells would kind of come near the camera. So we will be doing some blurring later to help blend those in more. But so like I said, you'll go through, add more shells in. ActionVFX provides some great shells. And once you've gone through all your shots, it should kind of eventually look something similar to this when it's finished. So we've kind of gone through now, and yeah, it looks, right now it looks rough. Trust me, I completely get it. You're like, oh, whoa. But just follow me still. Our shells are in place now. So before we start blending those shells together, another thing I like to do that a lot of people don't realize is that the shell ejector actually gets hot when you're doing automatic. So when the camera is usually up this close, I like to add a little kind of heat wave. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this layer right here, just so I don't forget, change the coloring of it, and just remind myself that this is our smoke layer, because sometimes I forget when I just use the original name of stuff. Perfect. So now we're going to go a new adjustment layer. We're going to put that under the smoke. Yep, we're going to go to our ellipse tool, and we want to just kind of size our ejector right there, about there. And then what we're going to do is keyframe our mask again, kind of position this a little bit where we want it to be exactly. We're going to type in DIS so that we can find turbulent displacement. We're going to drop that right over our adjustment layer. And now that's gonna make it look kind of funky right off the bat. So what we need to do is we need to kind of bring up our feather. Usually anything 230 and higher is better. Again, it's the preference of the shot, how close it is. Just so you kind of can see the difference. We want to find a nice blur blend for this. We want high. Sometimes you can use twist and bulge. Again, it depends on how close it is, the caliber of the gun, but for this, we're gonna do bulge. We're gonna go into the complexity, bring that up. Kind of bring this down a little bit to get where I kind of want the heat to kind of look. Again, this is kind of a preference with the shot, how it looks. Just don't make it too warped. We want that heat kind of feeling. I usually give it a little displacement, and that's not looking too bad. So the big key thing now we need to do is go through, keyframe, and position that on top, which can take a little bit, but you know, that's all part of the editing process. We'll go through, keyframe it, and by the time you're done, you should hopefully get something that looks a little bit around this. Okay, so now that we've gone through, place that over it. It's a very subtle thing. A lot of people don't notice it, and I've even changed some of the sizing, as you can tell, but it's very important to do this. Now, the next step that we're gonna do is a step that is missed a lot by people, is that a lot of the times there's actually a little spark that comes out the end of the shell ejector. And so usually I found a great way to do this is by taking a muzzle flash asset, also provided by ActionVFX. And some of them, if you find a keyframe in the muzzle flash right about the second after the flash, this moment, it's a perfect asset to use to place into the shell, in front of the shell ejector, to simulate that hit. Now, not every bullet is gonna do it either. It's just a few, so you kind of, again, this is a preference on how many you want to give that little extra spark from it, you know. But as you can tell, I'm taking this asset right here. And because of the coloring of this one, you know, I can either do a lighten on it, or I can go add. I think for this, I'm going to just keep it at an add. I'm gonna rotate it, get it in the position I want it in. Size it down. Now that I've got it sized down, place it right there. And make sure it lines up. We want to put it over or under the bullet. It's again a preference. Sometimes you look better under or over. So we need to go through our shots and find which ones that we want that effect to be added at. So I'm going to go through this, find the spots where I want it to be at, and add that flame moment. And so by the time you're done, you should get something that kind of looks like this. So now we've gone through, now you can see where it added that little spark moment. We're getting closer to the blending now. It's looking good. And as you can tell, I kind of lightened them up so they kind of blend a little bit better using a little metry tool. But so now we're gonna click onto this and we're gonna go just down to the first bullet now, and we're gonna blend the bullets now and blend those into our scene. So looking at the first bullet, we're gonna stop at this frame. Gonna find our Lumetri color tool. Gonna drag that right in. And so the first thing I like to do is go in. We're gonna mess a little bit maybe into our contrast and our exposure. First one is exposure. Kind of want to darken it just a little, bring it up. And now we're gonna hit our color temperature, which is really going to blend it in with the color that we need, which is more of a bluish from that side. It's looking good, it's looking better. getting there. And again, we're gonna get to the point where we will blend the shells in more. But I'll go through. And again, depends on your shot, your lighting, how you have it set, but you want to blend your bullet in. I prefer using the Lumetri to blend it in, but there are other tools that other people use. This is just what has worked for me over years. And that's looking good. So you want to go through all your bullets now and add that color correction, blend it how you need it to. And so by the time you're done, you'll get something that kind of, you know, will look around the lines of what we've got for ours, if you are following along using the same footage and whatnot. So now that we've kind of blended it in, it's looking better. It's looking better. The problem we're still having is our bullets. They need to blur. As you can tell, when they come out of the gun, they're fine, but the bullets come towards the camera. So we need to do a camera lens blur and add that to our bullets. So we need to also, once we've done that, we're going to keyframe it. So what I like to do is I just put the color correction always below it, but we're going to keyframe it. So we need it to be at either a 1 or a 0 at the beginning. We start the keyframe, and by the time the bullet gets to where we need on camera, so about here where it starts to get blurry more, that's when we need to hit the blur. Now also, depending on the shot, if your character's moving, sometimes a camera blur is not the best and actually a directional blur. But again, it is a preference. So I'll go through, find the spots where I want it, and so when it gets real close to the camera, we'll blur it even more. Go through, like I said, blur what we need to. And we'll start going through all of them and blurring the clips, or the bullets, I'm sorry, when we need to get them blurred and when they need to be in focus. And so this is starting to look a lot better now. And so like I said, you got to go through each one of your bullets and do them. You can copy and paste the same settings if you want to. I would suggest, depending on how you have your bullet path, adjust it frame by frame, do it that way. Make sure you get everything perfectly correct. So when you're done, it should look something kind of like this. So it's looking a lot better. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to add a muzzle flash at the front end of this. I'm not going to go into a tutorial on how we do the muzzle flash because that will be saved for a different tutorial. But essentially we're going to put in our muzzle flash and then add our environmental flash onto him. So when you add the muzzle flash with the heat that comes out of the barrel of the gun, smoke and whatnot, it'll kind of bring it up to something that looks like this. Now, with environmental flash, there's a lot of things you have to think about. Your lighting in the shot, you know, daytime, nighttime, if you're outside, indoor. Now, weirdly enough, for our shot here, we actually are not going to worry about environmental lighting because the wall, if you see, it's actually making a flash right now. So that's good. So we're just going to leave that for right now. And so right now we're going to focus on the environmental flash on him. So as I showed, the wall, it's already got kind of this glow to it, and it works kind of well with ours, with our gun flashing. So we're going to kind of keep that for now. And we're just going to do an environmental flash on our guy here. So I'm going to take the original footage. I'm going to find to the spot right underneath basically all of our effects that we've done. And I put it up here first, just so I know that that's where it's at. I get our friendly pen tool. And I start drawing out where the light's going to be hitting the gun when it flashes. And so this is an important step. Again, on your angles, you really want to see how the light's kind of hitting everything, and based off of that, I think that's going to be your best way to go through and correct this how you need it to be. So we'll go through, we got our mask, it looks good. First thing, I'm going to bring keyframe our mask because we need to. We're gonna go in, we need to make this an add. So it's gonna make it bright and look all white and scary. You're like, oh no. Sometimes you can do a screen. So I like to do screen sometimes, but most of the time you do an add. But for the lighting that we have here, we're gonna go screen, and then we're gonna really crank up our mask feathering, like hella crank it up. I'd say past 250 or more when you really wanna blend it. And then you're gonna also keyframe the opacity of the mask to 100, go 2 frames, hit 0. Because it's a flash, it'll just end instantly. So it's looking good, but we need it to be more colored also to the actual like gun color flash, you know, orange. So we'll go back in to Lumetri. We're gonna drag and drop that right on top. Go in, and right off the bat hit the temperature, and we're gonna crank that. Really get it to blend. And once you start blending it with the color of your rifle, that's when you kind of tell how much you need to actually blend the mask in more. So, you know, you might need to go a little bit higher than I do. Again, it really depends on how close you are to your actor, your camera, your settings, the gun, all that matters. So we will do a tutorial over different gun shell ejections as well in later videos. But so this is looking good so far. So I'm gonna blend this out a little bit more. And so we have to go through each bullet shot where the flash comes up and add our environmental blur, add it, you know, to our person here. And so this can be a time-consuming process depending on how detailed you want to go into it for this and how quick it is. You know, we're gonna go kind of detailed, but not as hard as we could go with the mask. Again, it depends on really what you're working on, your workload, things like that, etc. You know. But for this, I think this is looking great. And so when you're finished, it should do something like this when you're done. And that's looking good. Now, the one thing I like to add, which is another secret tip of mine, and it's usually if you're up close like this with the camera or you have it on a tripod with gunshots, is you need to make the gunshot feel a little bit more, you know, like it's a bang. And so what I do is I make a adjustment layer, put it on top of everything. I'll go in, camera lens blur. I'll find the moments where the flash goes off and maybe have that blur, you know, set to like a 1 or a 3. Now I would also bring up the rotation, bring up complexity, change to the highest, you know, decagon, I believe is what it's set. And like I said, you really want to put it at like a either 0.3 or 1, and you only got to keyframe it a couple frames. It just helps bring a little like intensity to the shot itself. So we're gonna go through now, find our moment where it should go off. There it goes on again, keyframe it when it's off and on. And do not do every single gunshot. I would only ever do that if your camera is really up close to our character. And again, with the caliber of gun, maybe if they're shooting a deagle or something very high caliber, but it's a preference thing that I like to do to help just sell a little bit more intensity to the shot itself. And so we're going through now. Keyframe the ones we want, see how it looks. Thinking that's looking really good right now. Find another spot where we'll just blur it just slightly. It's looking great. So when we're done, you know, we should get an end result that looks like this. You know, looking back on our end renders, I think this looks really fantastic. Client worthy, client happy. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial video. If you really liked this video, please comment on any other tutorials you want me to do, as well as subscribe for more. Thanks guys, I'll see you next time.